a wedding, an affair, a death, and lots of coughing. Hey, AfterBuzzers, we're talking episodes 1 and 2 of Netflix's new show, The Crown. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
So this is the
Your
this
special
was the
request.
choice. This okay. So God Save the Queen.
Well, it's the British national anthem, which we know as. I
Our
just
country
said it.
'tis
Yeah,
of
our country
thee.
'tis of thee.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey guys, what's up?
We did the remix. That's the American thing to do. We're like,
Yeah.
take that, take that, take
You're
that.
working
Put our own
well.
spin on it.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Angela Struck here. I am your host, and we are talking about the new show on Netflix, The Crown, which is so exciting. We are excited to start this show off, but first let my amazing co-hosts introduce themselves.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Tehran, Prince Royal of the 2 doors and the 3 doors. Please find me at I have the worst British accent, by the way. I just can't even try.
That's not so good, Tehran.
Oh.
I think mine might be a slightly better.
Yours, but my Scottish one is
Oh.
We're doing something.
Oh, that's good.
And I am Tehran on across all social media, IG, TW, FB, whatever acronym you can find, at I am Tehran.
Hey everybody, my name is Tsahai, and you can find me on social media at Say Hi Tsahai. That's Tsahai.
Silent T, because she's more British than the rest of
Ooh,
us.
That's right.
I
I
like
like
that.
that.
And you can find me on social media at the Angela Struck on Twitter and Angela Struck on Instagram and Snapchat. Yeah, you're gonna hear a lot of butchered British accents, I feel like, on this after show.
Towards the end of the
We
season.
have to. I was actually excited that on the show there were American actors who
Yeah.
pulled off British accents.
John Lithgow
Exactly.
being one. I know.
He's Winston Churchill on
Yeah,
the show.
yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I don't know actors' names, but I know the characters and the
Right,
historic reference
right.
within the show.
All right,
So,
perfect. So let's start us off. It is 1947, which 2 years after World War II has ended.
Right.
British, the British people need help. They need strong leaders.
Right.
So we are in the situation where King George VI, who we kind of know, if for Americans that probably don't know British history as much, if you saw the King's Speech.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
The stutter, the king that, kind of had to build up his strength to lead the people after World War II. So what are your initial impressions on the show? What are your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to King George VI, real quick, right? So we see that in the beginning, Winston Churchill is very revered in the British Empire,
Yeah.
right? So he walks in, everyone, it's like they cheer him, they
Freaking out,
worship
the
him.
crowds.
And he makes a comment about King George VI. He makes a comment that he's the king that lost India, who gave up India, because that's the reference of the time. We're looking at 1947.
Yes.
In November, that's the wedding. That's where the
Right.
show starts.
Right.
A month before that, or 2 months before that, in August, India gains independence. The original independence is a dominion from England,
From the Commonwealth.
from UK. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like a thing. The historical reference in the show I thought was way more accurate than I was going to give it credit for, because
agree.
when you watch these kind of soap opera dramas
Right.
of historical shows, they're never historically accurate because there's not enough drama in the real history. But
Yeah.
in this one, there's just so much drama. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. At first, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be really kind of built up. But I actually felt it seemed very true to, what actually took place. What was your...
Well, when you start a show with blood and someone coughing into a toilet, it can only go up from there.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
That was pretty sobering.
Yeah, that was a bit gory. I mean,
Yeah.
I knew about the stutter, but I didn't know
You
about
thought
the
that
cough.
was gory?
That
Don't
I
watch
was-
Walking Dead. I'll tell you that right
I
now.
do
Stick
not.
to The Crown.
I do not watch The Walking Dead, but I mean, episode 1 was this wedding, so it was all about the wedding and how that changed Elizabeth's life and the family's life as a whole. So I really, it started off slow.
Yes.
I was a little bored. I was like, okay,
Yes.
where is this going? But it definitely got better.
Totally agree with you. It definitely kind of started slow, and I was kind of like,
I
are
like
we
that
going to
it
watch
started
this
slow.
guy ill for, a bunch of episodes?
Exactly.
But then we started to see the wedding. So what are your thoughts about the wedding? I think they were trying to say that Queen Elizabeth, she's marrying Prince Philip
Correct.
of the Duke of Edinburgh.
Right.
He's being, made into a duke in the very beginning.
He's actually giving up his Greek kingdom
Yeah,
and his Greek citizenship.
Corfu.
And
He's from Corfu.
He's giving
Yeah.
up a lot in order to become the prince.
Yeah, it seemed like such
he
a
gives up his
true
title.
love story. Like they actually really love each other, and it seemed like the families were judging, like, oh, look at his mother, who's the nun. You know, it kind of felt like this wouldn't be our choice if we were arranging this partnership. But they clearly had this connection. They were giggling together. They, you know,
The kiss they share.
Yeah.
They share this real passionate. Like he kind of alphas her and like gets this kiss, that sneaks a kiss, which is very unroyal in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting watching their dynamic because I would have never known. Like you're saying stuff like, as in we know the history. Yeah, we don't know this.
Yeah.
I grew up in American public school systems. I didn't know ish, right? So I'm like looking at all this stuff as if it's brand new.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, it can't be real. And a lot of it's actually coming off real. And I didn't realize that they had. First of all, I didn't know that Philip was still alive, which is crazy. Like, yo, they never talk about this guy. Like,
whoa.
no one ever
Because
brings
he
him
is
up.
so far in the back, we never see him.
You guys-
That's why we only see the queen.
That is so funny that you say that because I
Exactly.
was like, we only know Queen Elizabeth.
This poor 95-year-old who's like, yo, I'm actually worth something too.
I know.
We never talk about him, but I
But
didn't know.
that's true to what we're seeing in this character, wouldn't you say?
Exactly, because
Yeah.
he's kind of a behind the scenes, kind of very a humble person.
Yeah.
Not humble. I don't think he's humble. I think he just learned to play his position after a while. After
Yeah.
years of being pushed in the back, we see in the episodes that, you know, when she becomes queen, he has to understand this is the role that you have to play. You have to be behind me. And that's what I really love seeing
Possibly,
the dynamic.
because in the first part, when they're doing their vows, she does say the words to cherish and obey,
Right.
which became
Right.
a contention. Winston Churchill says, Winston Churchill's wife is like, obey?
Yeah.
She's like shocked.
Yeah.
And Winston's like, she actually agreed to that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but I just didn't know that they had a love together. And I disagree with both of you when you guys are saying it started off slow and that you didn't like that. I actually really like that it started off slow because what I saw was the historical dynamic within the characters. So I saw that there was like a bit of a power struggle.
Yeah.
I saw King George, who was clearly once a great man, losing it. I see a lot of these things that I might not have seen if they had built up too quickly.
Yeah.
They kind of
It was
eased into
organic. It slowly built, and it felt as it would have been. It didn't feel like they were rushing it or forced.
I think that's because we're used to seeing Elizabeth as an old lady. Here we're starting from the point in which this new basically career starts for her. So they're giving us an inside view into how everything happened. And so they wanted to take their time, but it just started off a little slow. But when you were speaking about their love and the love between Elizabeth and Philip, the marriage wasn't agreed upon by everyone, even
Right.
her because I was reading that he came from like a difficult background. He didn't exactly have like the perfect upbringing. I mean, his mama arrived in a nun's costume. And she
Right.
just came out the crazy house.
yeah.
So that's not
And,
exactly.
and he also has sisters, 3 sisters
Right.
who are married to
So, I
allegedly
don't-
prominent Nazi members.
We all have to, like break this one down. A nun isn't supposed to be having sex, but she has all these kids. It was
After she became
she
a nun
became not
afterwards.
afterwards, yes. But I mean, it was a little.
or maybe she was making a fashion statement, and she just
yeah,
wanted,
that was-
you know,
she was
people
like-
to say, "This is me. This is who I am."
Yeah.
Let's not
See,
talk
they
about
love me.
the Crown Prince's mother, please, because I would like to go to England at some point in my life. I
apologize.
still think the powers that be. Look, for all intents and purposes, we're looking at an inside view of the Illuminati. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. England is still responsible. The UK is responsible for like a third of the planet still.
Okay.
They are still the
Okay.
queen. Queen Elizabeth's
right.
still the queen of Canada, all the way to Jamaica. That is a true story. Australia,
Okay.
everywhere. She's still their queen
They still
and
are queens.
sovereign.
Well,
But
there
we're
you go.
also getting an inside view into a family. And that's what I liked about the show.
Yeah.
We got to see what goes on inside this family and their flaws, and it made them more human
Exactly.
as opposed to the people that we see on, like, you know, when there are birthdays
Yeah.
or large events. I'm used to seeing the queen as an old lady. I couldn't even imagine her as a young
Yeah,
woman.
in fact, you didn't actually see a lot of the lavish. I mean, of course, with the wedding and some of the scenes, but it was very human. It was very personal, and it felt like a family. I like that. So you guys, one thing I noticed when they were giving their vows, she was very
Nervous.
It was hard for her to get through those. What
Yeah.
do you think that was about? I wasn't
I think it was
understanding that
because
moment.
First of all, I think she requested to say the word obey to Philip so he could know that, yes, I eventually will be the queen, but I'm going to humble myself.
Actually, she doesn't know at that point she's going to be the queen. So this is historical.
But she
King
knows
Edward
eventually
is
she's
supposed
gonna
to
be the queen.
No. King Edward is young. No one knew that he was going to abdicate. That was not in the plan. In fact, Queen Elizabeth
that's
is
correct.
meant
Yeah.
to never become queen. She would always
she always knew
remain
it was
a
a
princess.
possibility.
There's a possibility that's like Harry. Harry lives a life where he's technically possibly going to become king, but as we know, it's going to
You're
be.
saying it wasn't in his or her train of thought. She
Exactly.
wasn't thinking that. Of
That's
course,
what
maybe.
I
historically
disagree
the
because I think
reference.
eventually you saw that it became more and more it came to the forefront of her mind more, especially as her father became more and more ill. And even when later on we'll discuss when they went to Kenya and she was trying to discuss with her husband Philip, what their plans were. You could tell that she was I felt she was kind of on the fence.
Okay. So I guess we have some disagreement there, but I guess the point we were thinking that was hard for her to get through is the obey line, because maybe that would be controversial to some people, or is that what we're thinking?
I actually thought that she was just nervous as
Nervous.
a bride.
Yeah.
Like, it's not easy to basically become someone's wife. Like she
and
even
in front
says
of the whole country.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot going
whole
on,
world,
and
really.
she even says like to him jokingly, of course, but you have 24 hours to rethink it, because she knows what he's given up to be there. He's given up a lot
Yeah.
in a way just to be fulfill her destiny.
That's very true.
And so it's not easy. I mean, brides falter at the altar all the time.
yeah.
What I loved seeing is that when she was nervous, he was able to make her laugh in that moment. And
Yes.
that's where you saw the human side of their relationship,
Yes.
where he understands her like no other. I think because he came from a difficult background, he is like the guy that's rough around the edges, and she's like the prissy prim girl. So it's like opposites attract, and that's why they work.
Interesting. Okay, so then we get to the part where King George the Sixth, he's really starting to deteriorate, and he goes into surgery, and he comes out. They pull out a tumor the size of our heads, and then they're kind of like, oh, he's fine, he's gonna make a full recovery in the news and everything, and everybody's buying this story because I think the British needed something to believe in, and because the king, if he even thought in the back of his mind that he was dying, would not be able to lead. What was your impression of that operation scene? It seems so antiquated, and like be doing it in that room. And
I love the fact that they were doing in that room. I thought it was like the ultimate private surgery. Like
Yeah.
you get surgery in your house. You don't even have to leave. No ambulance, no nothing. Like right there. You don't. The wheelchair is just taking you down the 2 doors down to your room. I love that. Also, I thought the room was beautiful, and that's one of the
I
things
thought that was a
also-
very cool way of shooting it with the dark, the lighting and everything. I thought looked
Exactly.
really nice.
But when that lung came out with the tumors in it,
Yeah.
and it was black, and then you see Philip later on.
That's
go
what my
into that
question. What do
room.
you think Philip was walking in there for? Because I almost thought for a moment I was like, is this like, does Philip want the throne? Like, is he wanting him to die so that he could make? I was like wondering.
I think
Philip could never ascend to the throne.
Yeah.
He's not. See, Philip is the grandchild of Queen Victoria, so he has some rights, but at the same time, he's not anywhere near the ascension line.
But I mean, what would he maybe be like? Oh, if he dies, then we're kind of closer. I don't know. I just was
think it was
wondering,
just
what
a-
was he walking in there
It was like
for?
a tradition. See, I think a lot of things that we need to put in perspective is the historical fact that we're looking at surgery that's happening in 1947.
Right.
So even hospitals weren't the hospitals we
Right.
think of today.
Of course,
Right.
yeah.
So there are these crowded, sick places. People are
Yeah.
still getting these plagues and this kind of. So he's getting a private surgery, like you said. Plus, it's just custom. I mean, this is his son-in-law coming in to check in on the father. Like
Yeah.
that's because a
The
woman
way
wouldn't be
that was
allowed really
shot,
in.
I thought.
Oh, that's true.
So who
yeah,
else?
he wouldn't. She would not want to go see her father in that state.
Well, I don't know if she would specifically be allowed.
And
but
maybe
this
even
is
be
a lot
allowed.
of culture.
That's
There's
a
a lot
good
of
point.
tradition.
Yeah.
This is rooted in that. This
Yeah.
is, and it's the highest tradition that we have on the planet. It's the royal tradition.
Right.
These are things, and even as I want to also put in perspective the whole reason Winston Churchill plays a part is because the king is no longer the leader
Yes,
of the government.
he's the prime minister, which
figurehead.
is perfect.
The
Thank you for bringing
figurehead.
that up.
So it's
he's
not like
really the
he's-
decision maker.
Yeah.
The king is,
Yeah.
you're saying, is the figurehead.
No, he's a
Yeah.
figurehead,
He just
but
looks good.
Yeah.
exactly. But we do have to understand that principles of economics and things. If, for example, teams won't list injured players on that injured list unless they absolutely have to, because they still want to put out there that their players strong and healthy, and we can. So of course they're not gonna be like, oh, looks like George is a goner.
But I
that's
think
not gonna happen.
Going back to Philip and why he was in that room at the time, you notice he went in kind of on the sly, and I think it's because it's the beginning where you see Philip and King George have a quiet relationship. You don't see them converse much, but I feel like Philip understands what's going on. Philip was in the military. He's able to assess situations. So I think he knew, you're not telling me everything. You just came into the room and
I want to see for myself.
Yeah, I'm going to do some research on my own to know what's really going on. Plus, hello, Philip had a rough childhood. He knows you got to look around and know what's going on.
I like that.
His rough childhood really affected you.
Really
It like connected with you.
Wait a minute, you were in the, this naval officer. I'm thinking you're all prim and proper, you're handsome and you're blonde and good looking. I'm thinking you came from, I didn't know you came from the other side of the tracks.
We didn't even know he was still alive.
No, exactly. So much we didn't know about Philip.
Like Philip is still alive today.
And married to the queen.
Married to the queen.
I was
We've never
like,
seen
this marriage is obviously falling apart because we've never seen it. And then I'm like, oh, they're still, he's still
together.
alive.
He's 95. He's like, he kicks it with her every day.
We are learning things here, guys. Yeah. Okay, so then we find out, the king goes, he meets with Winston. He's feeling really good about himself, but Winston is obviously kind of apprehensive. He realizes this is not, I don't know what he's thinking. He's delusional. He's still sick. Right. And then the King George speaks to the doctor. We find out it's malignant. He's only got a few months. So let's talk about Winston Churchill and kind of his role. He knows that he's going to have to be the strong, he says, she needs me, and his wife says, who needs you? And he goes, her. He's speaking of England.
Her.
England.
Actually, her is the acronym for Elizabeth. Her. It's.
Do you think it means her?
His Imperial Majesty?
Sometimes they talk about
both.
The country as her too.
Possibly.
I don't know.
I think it was both.
Let's fight it out.
They both need, both hers.
Yeah, exactly.
Need Winston.
Because I think Winston, first of all, John Lithgow as Winston Churchill is amazing.
I think he's doing a great job.
And second of all, that little dog, loving that little dog, because in comparison to his
how big
large
he is.
build, and then he has this little teensy tiny
Winston
dog.
Churchill did have a little dog.
I know, but it was just great. You see these things in books. I can't remember seeing, actually researching what Winston Churchill really walked and talked like. So this is giving me kind of a slight idea of that. Yeah. But I think he is. One of the themes that I saw is that Elizabeth, she loses a father in King George, and she kind of gains a father in Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
And she's losing a huge the male figure in her life. So other people like Winston Churchill, and even I would think her sister, Princess Margaret's love interest.
Peter.
I think he becomes, a kind of a male figurehead, and that's why they end up keeping him in the family.
Yeah, I definitely think she's going to need a lot of guidance.
Exactly.
She didn't seem like she was super confident when asked to go do the Commonwealth tour.
Right, because she messed up that speech a little bit. Yeah. What did you guys think about that scene when she was giving the speech and greeting all the other tribal chiefs?
I thought it was a really interesting. Let's get to that. Hold on 1 second, because that's in episode 2. So I just want to say, no, you're fine. I just want to keep track of us here. Okay.
No, you've ruined it.
Yeah,
it's done.
Gosh, are you kidding me?
It's done. Comment below if you think Tsahai. Say hi, Tsahai just ruined the whole thing by jumping ahead. Hashtag say bye.
I'm like trying
Tsahai.
to. There's so much going on. I'm like, wait, I'm gonna lose everything. Okay, so actually, I think we're just about there. Yeah. So she goes on the tour. All right. So I thought that was an awesome scene, because if you listen to what she was saying, she was like, a modern, vibrant city. And then there was an image of a woman that was like topless, and like it just didn't seem like a modern, vibrant city. Right. And it felt like those words to me weren't her own, that somebody had written those for her. Right. And then her seeing that her view was different. Yeah. And I think that it was kind of speaking to who she is as a person and who she's going to be as a leader. She immediately understood how to show respect to the other leaders. This is not a hat, Philip. This is a crown. Right. She was carrying, and I think that it was already saying who she is and her
because
ability to connect with people.
I agree, because when she met the tribal people, she showed them a lot of respect, whereas Philip was kind of looking at them like a sideshow.
Right.
And he's like, where'd you steal these medals
Yeah.
from? But Elizabeth from the get-go showed them respect. But also one of her the advisors said to her, listen, like a lot of the other countries and the continent are, you know, fighting for their own freedom right now and their independence. We need to keep, you know, the locals with us. So do your best. And so I think that also spoke to that situation.
But was she just doing that, or was she actually speaking from her heart? Because I felt that she actually had a lot more empathy than, for example, Philip.
I think it was a little bit of both. She knew you got to keep. She was doing her job on behalf of her father, but I think it spoke to her nature, because we saw in other scenes how kind she was to
I felt like she was the kind. She comes off kind, and I remember there are instances where even George is getting upset or something. There was actually in the very first scene, or one of the first scenes, where King George is upset.
Dressed.
He gets upset. Yeah, he gets upset, and it's like, you're gonna get bothered by a commoner. And that's actually an interesting thing, because now we notice immediately there's a hierarchy, and it's like Queen Elizabeth doesn't really, that's what makes her a proper queen, is she doesn't prescribe to this hierarchy as much. She shows respect for everyone.
Right, and she wasn't even a queen then.
At the time, exactly.
Princess.
Yes. So then we see, I think, my favorite scene thus far, which was the elephant when they're on the safari. I thought that was such a great microcosm for their relationship moving forward, that Philip was immediately willing to sacrifice himself to be sure that Elizabeth was safe. And I thought that was just so cool. We're talking about the part when the elephant was attacking. They were both out there with one other guide, and the guide was like, oh, you guys go. And he wanted to make sure that Elizabeth was with the guide, the professional was good to go, and he would put himself at risk. And he handled it well.
Very much
did
so.
handle it well.
He backed that elephant up.
He really did. I
So-
think because at this point in their relationship, they were still newlyweds.
Yeah.
And prior to this Commonwealth tour, Philip was just decorating the house.
Yeah.
So when they got to Kenya, as they refer to it as well, this is why I'm wearing my tribal,
I love it.
scarf here. This was with the elephant, when he was trying to defend his wife. It was the first time that we saw him kind of man up for her, and I think she was kind of riled up
was
and turned
into it,
on.
yes.
I think, you know, the African heat got to
Yes.
them.
Well, I mean, it's also the show of chivalry and stuff.
Totally,
I mean, there's,
that too.
I've never, you know, it's interesting, because when I saw that scene, I'm thinking to myself, I've never felt that way about a girl, where I'm like, I can love a girl, but I've never loved a girl more than I've loved myself. And I felt like
wouldn't
maybe
get trampled
Philip
by
did.
an elephant
No, I
for a
trampled by.
girl?
I would have been like, oh my God, we're getting trampled, and like maybe shoved her away. Like I would have just something. But it's just like, because like I from the beginning, I never realized that they actually had such a strong connection. Because to me, all these royal marriages and things seemed like, even the crown itself, the concept of the crown, it's that it's a corporation. The crown is a corporation. It's a holding.
Yeah.
And it holds all these properties and deeds and lands and financial investments. And yet this is a real marriage. Like they're really together.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me,
I
because
read that she like loved him like at first sight, and she was really young when they first met. One thing that I read is that he's actually her third cousin.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that's
Well,
possible. That's of course
all
that's all the royal line.
Surprised! I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, I knew that went on, but I didn't realize it was in this particular marriage as well.
Yeah, interesting.
Most of the
Kissing
it's
cousins
all a
were
little.
most of the royals, in fact, most of the European royals are all related.
Yeah.
Right,
So
right,
that's
yeah,
not
these
as
two.
yeah. So that's
Yeah.
not a thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
So
how you
then,
keep the crown.
basically, we see Winston Churchill back at the office, and he's got the new woman there working for him. He calls her up to the office. What did you guys think of that? Did you think that he was going to make a move on her?
Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to make a move on
Yep.
her. I
Yeah.
think he was testing her out. He was testing her out, but I loved when because he was in the bath and he shuffled and the water came splashing on her. I think it was like her initiation / baptism into the Winston Churchill.
Ooh, baptism. Look at you. That's good.
'Cause, you know, it's all about the church and
no, that's very a good symbolism there. Yeah, I felt like it was her hazing process.
Exactly.
Everybody, you know, he was like, "What is everyone saying about me back downstairs?" I loved his line though. It takes a monster to beat Hitler.
Exactly.
I loved that.
Plus, this was his second time around, so he knew all the other women. He was like, "I'm done with you. I already seen everything here." But this new girl, who are you? You're cute.
this?
You're young. You're fresh.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes powerful men need like visual stimulation and to inspire them and maybe to keep them going. And I think that's what she was.
I
for
completely
Winston.
agree with that statement.
Hello, that's what we are.
But you haven't been so inspired that you're willing to give your life over.
No, I'm
anybody
not
yet.
getting
You're-
trampled
you're
for an
just-
elephant. I would have made a move on the girl. Like, I'm just not. And that's
You're-
probably why I
yeah.
don't have the crown. That's
That
basically
you've
what it
gotta
comes down to.
You're gonna
exactly.
get there. You're gonna one day meet that person that's
special
just gonna
someone. You're a
sweep you off your
queen.
feet, and
He's
you'll
gonna
be
meet his
like,
queen.
"Car, hit me, not her."
Oprah.
Okay,
Oprah.
there
I
you
want
go.
Oprah. She's
Oh.
a billionaire. Like, that's the closest to the queen that I'm gonna ever get.
Okay, so then we go and we see the king. He's just trying to. It felt to me like he's just wanting to enjoy his last days. He's
thing.
hunting. He is singing at the piano.
This is the most human we've seen him.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the most just normal that he is.
And he was just very lax and that was very sweet.
I really enjoyed that scene where he was singing with his daughter.
Yeah.
In that scene where he was singing with Princess Margaret, I loved her dress as she played by the
know.
piano. But
How
then
gorgeous
it was
was that?
beautiful. But then I was like, Margaret, you're showing a lot of cleavage.
I know.
And I think that's the sign of her personality that we'll continue
Yes.
to see
That's
later
interesting.
Well, she's got Peter there. We know that
right.
Peter is there, so she wants to look good.
She's showing off for
True.
Peter, and I thought that,
Yeah.
and that's actually very interesting that because it does foreshadow the difference between
Yes.
Elizabeth and Margaret. Is
Yes.
that Margaret gets to be more callous and laissez-faire, the same way that we see the dynamic between Charles and Harry. I feel like it's the same, like they're brothers, but Harry gets to play
Ooh.
around and he gets to
fun
go out
one.
with Meghan Markle and do all these things,
Yeah.
and Charles always has to be on point because he's the
Yes.
ascension to the
So
throne.
true. And thank you to everybody who's writing in the live chat. We are reading this, and it's so great to have you involved. And a lot of people are bringing up Harry and William. So, yeah.
Oh, William, William.
Yeah.
Charles the dad. Charles
Yeah.
is the dad.
So then, dun dun dun, we see the king die. And, I kind of knew that was going to happen. I actually didn't think it was going to happen so fast.
Right.
I looked on IMDb and he's in 7 episodes. So maybe we see flashbacks.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we're going
You
to see some
cheated
more.
a little. You
I know.
cheated a little. Well, I mean, I knew that he dies, and she's not aware of it.
Right.
Which is actually like, I don't know, as a child, because so at the end we see
Yeah,
him being
everyone's
the
saying
most.
it's sad that it took so
it's
long.
the most human we see him, right?
Yeah.
So we see this human side of King George that isn't really shown, and then all of a sudden he's the most human. He's the sweet. He's like
Yeah.
singing with his daughter, and that father-daughter bond is one of the most magical bonds in the universe. And then, as a child, I wouldn't even know what to do or imagine if something happened and my father died and I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
And the way she finds out.
Yeah.
And that's why I love with how Winston tried to prevent her from finding out in the press.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I was really nervous. I didn't know how it was going to play out. And that whole scene really, I loved the way they shot that because I was nervous. Also in that scene when she, back in Kenya, when they were driving somewhere and the car overheated, we learned that Elizabeth was a mechanic
Yeah.
in the war. I was like, who knew? She
Yeah.
got skills.
We
Yeah.
learned. We
So,
learned.
but yeah, the death, I think that's where we also see that the press is starting to be on her. Because it was the beginning of the press being the vultures that they have become to the royal family.
Yeah, but do you know what I loved though? They were vultures, but they also showed some
I like
respect.
the press, so I just want to throw that out there for all the
Listen to the royal
eagles,
family.
to all the eagles that are the paparazzi,
Well,
TMZ, and
but
all
I
the
liked-
press.
I thought
Thank
that
you
they
guys
did
for your continued
something-
support. Continue
You're
with your
right.
vulture speech, please. No, please continue.
I thought that they did something that I don't know if we would see nowadays, which is they showed some respect and they kind of stayed
back
out
a
of the
little
way
bit.
a little bit. And like the guy got in front of us like, no more pictures right now. Like give him a minute.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool to see.
Especially
of a
compared to the
time
Princess
gone by.
Diana situation.
Exactly, with how they're so
But
in their face.
I feel like actually the press and paparazzi does show restraint and respect when it comes to people's privacy, as far as it concerns children and funerals and death. So I think that's the beginning of a culture that we still see today.
Yes.
I don't see them being the vultures that you guys said. I would never say that. You guys, please,
well,
thank you.
They always
But no,
say that
but
the
I
British
just didn't see that.
paparazzi is the worst,
Right.
though, too.
They're the most-
They're the most invasive. So
I think there's a love-hate relationship. I think now people know how to work with how to use the press to their advantage. And maybe sometimes they do get a bad rap, but I mean, I just keep thinking about the Diana situation. And I recently heard that she loved the press, but the way she died, you know,
Horrific.
you know, it's so sad. And
But we
I
do
just
know this is
associate
the
that with them.
beginning of the so in the UK there's very strict laws on the media.
Right.
Okay. So for example, in America we can run things like the National Enquirer. They can just print rumors and it's
Libel,
fine.
yeah.
There's a much more strict libel and what's the word I'm looking for?
Defamation.
Defamation
Yeah.
and libel in the British press.
Right.
So they have to have proof in order to run something.
I see what
so
you're
that's
saying.
why they're a lot more invasive
about getting photos
exactly
and things.
because if they do it without and there's certain magazines in the UK that get sued overwhelmingly because they'll run a story without actual proof.
Interesting. Okay, that's a good point to know. I didn't realize
Yeah,
that.
it's slander and libel are a big thing in the UK. So
Yeah.
their laws are actually way more strict, especially concerning media.
So then we got the title of the show, which was Winston telling them to put the message over, which was say Hyde Park Corner, and I guess that was the code for the king has died, which I thought was kind of interesting. But we see her; she's devastated.
Of course.
She decides to go back, of course, and be with her family and honor her father. And we see that plane ride back. She can't sleep. They bring her clothes up onto the plane. And I think this was the most amazing part of the entire show was the grandmother saying, not only are you grieving the death of your father, you're grieving your death.
Right.
Because now you're not the priority anymore. The crown is.
Right.
Which, wow, as she changes from white to black. She's no more, naive young girl. She has to step up to the plate. Reality has hit her, and her life has changed forever.
I thought that was a nod to the movie Elizabeth, actually, where we saw a similar transformation in the Elizabeth character in that movie, who was also the queen, the Virgin Queen, like the almost the original Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
So because her mother's name was also Elizabeth, but
Yes.
But I'm just saying, like, it's just very interesting watching that transformation, and like you said, it was metaphoric, and it was one of the most iconic images throughout the entire show.
It was
Because
fabulously done.
We see in that scene Elizabeth making decisions already. She decided that she wasn't going to change her name like everybody else did.
Yes.
She was going to keep her name. I think that speaks to how she wanted to do things in a bit of a more modern way. Also, it wasn't her grandmother in that letter said that, it's not only the death of you, but it's the death of your father. I mean, it's the death of your old personality,
Right.
because you have to become this new person. You have to become not a mother to your kids anymore, but a mother to this country now, which I loved.
It was unbelievable. So I'm excited to see what happens next. But before, let's just touch on these last few final details that are cliffhangers that I think are going to be into our predictions for the next few episodes. Winston's wife comes and says, Antony's after your position.
Love her.
And Winston was like, no, I've, made this guy who he is.
Right.
I actually don't know the history there of what happens, so I'm excited to see. I
So-
don't know if you guys know.
From what I understand, Winston Antony was like Winston's protege.
Yes.
Right.
So, he came up under Winston. So the fact that he went to the king and tried to
Undermine
him, it was very scandalous. But I love the fact that Winston got that information from his wife.
Yes.
Because it shows the importance of wives who may have to stand behind their husbands.
But they're switched on.
Yeah, they're listening, they're getting details. And just like with the king, with his stutter and how his wife helped him through that, Winston's wife as well had to be the one. She kept her ears to the street, and then she told her man, and at first he was like, nah, you lying.
Yeah.
But then he
This
knew
is a very Empire way of explaining how this worked out. Go on,
just
no.
for those people who may need it to, transfer it
love
into
it.
modern terms, because the same thing is happening today. That a strong woman is always needed to stand with a man and actually be the one running things from behind.
But the nature of politics that we have, even in the world today, the modern world, comes from the British. Our
Right.
understanding of politics and all the the reasons we think it's underhanded and things like this, because that aristocracy that we think of is actually a British aristocracy. That's who we think of, and the concepts of blue blood and all these things that play, where we feel like our politicians need to be this kind of person, right? And we saw this actually play out in the recent election, where everyone's surprised because Hitler just had that pedigree.
Right.
So it's just interesting. I do actually know the history, you know, and I'll give you my prediction real quick.
Okay.
I think Elizabeth becomes queen. So I'm just saying, shocker. You know,
Spoiler
alert. Sorry, but the what you were touching on is when he like undermined Winston Churchill's authority.
Right.
Let's not forget all the underhanded things that Winston Churchill has done to get to where he is.
He's no
We
saint.
get to see that as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting if we do, because Winston Churchill is one of the most profound characters, historic characters that we've ever
He
had.
gets the job done no matter what it takes.
Sometimes it takes a lot.
Yeah.
And the job that he gets done is things like colonizing the free world. But whatever.
Wait,
But, like-
one question I have, because I just see in our chat, Shava says they actually moved his lung, not a tumor. That makes more sense because it was black. But then what from the smoke? But what
Which
did you
he
see
hates.
them wrap
Elizabeth
up?
hates smoking
That was
in
the
the
lung.
Yes, yeah,
that was
but-
the lung they wrapped.
So
up.
they, but it looked like they threw it away. So did
Yeah,
they throw
because it
away
was
one of
so
the
black.
lungs?
Yeah, it
So
was-
he then only had one lung.
Exactly,
Okay.
because there was a scene.
Thank
where
you,
he-
Shava. Thank you for. I was like, that is the
Well, it's a
biggest
cancerous
tumor.
lung. It's a cancerous lung.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And then we see the relationship that is going to, I think, continue to grow between Margaret and Peter. Ooh, the affair. Peter, the husband and father, which the guy mentioned numerous times to guilt trip him. Peter is offered the role of controller of the household. And the guy's basically being like, you wouldn't want this because you want to go home to your wife and children, don't you? And he's
Yeah.
like, no, I want to stay here with my lover.
Exactly.
So what do you guys think of that? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, suck it.
I think Peter just knew that the women in the whole household were going to need him more than ever. He also didn't want to leave his side piece.
Yeah.
But, you know, he loved that family. He was there with them more than he was with
That's
his own
interesting.
wife and children.
You think that Margaret's the side? I feel like his wife and kids are the side piece,
Yeah.
and Margaret's the main chick.
I got the
mean,
impression that he is
technically.
head over heels for
Yeah.
Margaret and
Right.
will do whatever for her.
mean,
It
I
wasn't
felt that
even a
too.
question.
I mean, if you ask the wife is going to say Margaret's the side piece. But, you know.
Side chicks you tend to do that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's what happens. But Peter, I really loved. I really liked him, and I think that relationship is going to continue to develop. And I want to see how scandalous it gets. Because like we saw his butt, and
It
I hope
is
to see more
scandalous.
of Peter's body.
Knowing the story of Margaret, it is a scandalous affair.
You
so.
you know it all. I think. I think you.
He's our resident
I don't know if
expert
we
here.
should do predictions because you're just gonna tell us the
What really
whole.
happened.
I'm trying not to. I'm trying to like research, but not too much.
I
Right.
didn't research specifically for this.
You're
I just
just
things that I
genius.
know. And the thing is, it's interesting because I didn't realize how historically accurate that this program
Show
was going to
is.
be, even to the point where King George VI was known for reciting dirty limericks, and they added that in to
Yeah,
the show, which
about-
was just
yeah.
like, it's just really. I mean, these little pieces and clues and context are very invaluable to the historical
Yeah.
accuracy of this show.
Yeah.
So while it's very entertaining
Yeah.
and it's full of drama, it also sticks very much to the storyline that happened.
Yeah.
It's authentic.
It is
Yeah.
extremely.
Like even as you said, her being the mechanic during the war speaks volumes about who she is. I don't know a lot of women nowadays that would want to be a mechanic.
I
during
don't
the
know
war.
a lot of men that
I
know how
mean,
to change a tire in
yeah.
LA.
So-
a lot of these guys walking with beards can't even change their own tires.
I
You
mean,
know who you are.
I'd be in trouble. So anyway, let's get into some quick predictions. We've already spoken a little bit about it, but let's do a few.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
What do you guys think we're going to see in episodes 3 and 4?
Well, I think that the scandal plays out a little more
with Margaret
because
and
with
Peter.
Margaret and Peter, I think that becomes more of a center. And I also think that Edward's abdication becomes a part of the
Ooh,
play.
yeah.
So we need to see how she becomes queen. So
Right,
that's
because you're
gotta
right. She's
play.
not. They're
She's not
calling her Queen Elizabeth, but I wonder if they're going to kind of go into that.
Yeah, we
more.
have to show
Yeah.
how she becomes queen, because Edward becomes king, and then King Edward abdicates his throne.
Because he has that romance with
He
that
has
woman.
a
I can't
romance.
think of her
Divorced
name.
woman.
Yeah.
And also he has what people think are alleged sympathizing ties to the Nazis, which is also a problem. So there's a lot that goes on there. So it's just very interesting, and I think that plays a bigger part.
I think what we're going to see is some issues between the sisters, between Elizabeth and Margaret, because as her duties increase, she's going to have more responsibility, and she's going to be more strict on her younger sister to, be more prim and proper, like she has to be, because it's forced upon her now.
Yeah.
Also, I think we're going to see, these newlyweds are now having to deal with this new job that his wife has.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to cause some issues within the marriage, because Philip still didn't even get time to adjust to this new role, and he's still used to being the alpha male. And Elizabeth was willing to take a step back and have her husband be the head of the household until the death of her father.
And King George was supposedly going to be taking care of the children like a little bit while they were gone.
Right.
So I think there'll probably be a dilemma about who's going to stay home with the kids, who's going to be out running the country, the empire. I think personally, too, we're going to see a lot more of the Winston Churchill issue with Antony, which I'm excited about. I feel like that's going to, as you said, Winston is such a interesting person that to see what lengths he'll go to fight for his position of power should be interesting. Well, awesome. First recap, guys. I am your host, Angela Struck. You can find me on Twitter at the Angela Struck and on Instagram and Snapchat at Angela Struck. And where can everybody find you guys?
Well, you can find me at I am Tehran. I'm the bathrobe heartthrob we're in here. I don't know. I'm just wearing a bathrobe. I feel like clutching my imaginary
wondered why
clothes.
you always wear a bathrobe, but now I know.
I'm comfortable. I'm always at home. I'm chilling. Here's the way
Love
we're watching
it.
TV and making it happen for you. And I hope you follow back, because I'm definitely going to follow you.
Yes.
And you.
Yes, you can find me at Say Hi Tsahai. That's SayhiTsahai.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week, Tuesday, 10 p.m. Bye, guys. Episodes
I'm not
3
doing
and
spirit
4.
fingers, guys. I'm
Why,
not
I
saying,
love
but
it.
I'm not.
I'm doing the wave.
we should do the royal
Yeah, the
wave.
royal wave I'll do.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
Yeah, have fun with that.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.